There's a specific kind of anxiety that hits around 55. Not the vague, I should probably save more kind. I'm talking about the real math. The sit down with a calculator, open the 401k, check the Social Security statement kind of math. You look at what you've saved. You estimate what you'll need. You guess how long you might live. And somewhere in that process, you realize something uncomfortable. This might not be enough. Not for the retirement you pictured. Maybe not even for a basic one. And it feels different at 55 than it did at 35, because at 35, you had time. At 55, you have math. And math doesn't care about optimism. My name's Evan, and I need to show you something about retirement that most Americans don't understand until it's almost too late. Most people think retirement works like this. You save for 40 years, you retire at 65. You withdraw 4% annually. You hope it lasts until you don't. That's the standard model. That's what most advisors run. That's what all the calculators assume. Preserve the principal, stretch it carefully, die with zero. But here's the truth that separates average retirees from wealthy ones. The most financially secure retirees don't spend their portfolios down. They structure them to keep growing. And the difference between someone who retires with $500,000 and runs out versus someone who retires with $500,000 and ends up with $2 million at 90 isn't luck. It isn't inheritance. It isn't market timing. It's structure. Let me explain. Most retirees operate in scarcity mode from day one. They watch their account drop with every withdrawal. They get nervous every time the market dips. They slowly tighten spending out of fear. That emotional cycle destroys long-term growth. But there's a small percentage of retirees who think differently. They don't ask, how do I make this last? They ask, how do I make this system produce? Same starting amount, different mindset, completely different outcome. The invisible line that separates these two groups isn't wealth. It's understanding withdrawal sequencing. Most Americans are taught the 4% rule. Retire at 65, withdraw 4% annually, adjust for inflation, hope the money lasts 30 years. But here's what most people miss. The 4% rule is defensive. It's built on preservation, survival. Don't run out. It assumes you need to avoid touching growth aggressively. It assumes you shift heavy into bonds. It assumes your main enemy is volatility. But what if volatility isn't the real risk? What if stagnation is? Let's walk through the numbers. You retire at 65 with $500,000. Under the traditional model, you withdraw 4% or $20,000 per year. Add maybe $25,000 from Social Security and you're living on $45,000 annually. You move into a 60-40 bond-heavy portfolio. You reduce risk. You protect. If markets cooperate, the account hovers sideways. Maybe it slowly declines. By 90, there's not much left. That's the safe plan. Now, here's the structured version. Same $500,000, different setup. You break it into 3 buckets. Bucket 1, $100,000 in cash and short-term bonds. That's your first 5 years of living expenses, $20,000 per year. No market exposure, no emotional roller coaster. Bucket 2, $150,000 in dividend stocks, REITs, income-producing assets. This generates roughly 4 to 5% annually, around $6,000 to $8,000 in income, depending on the year. Bucket 3, $250,000 in growth index funds, broad market exposure, long-term compounding, untouched for at least 8 to 10 years. Now, watch what happens. You live off bucket 1 for 5 years. Markets fluctuate. Doesn't matter. You're not selling stocks to live. If bucket 3 averages 8% annually, $250,000 becomes roughly $367,000 in 5 years. Meanwhile, bucket 2 has been generating income and modest growth. At year 5, bucket 1 is depleted. That was its job. You replenish it by trimming gains from bucket 3, which has grown substantially. You refill bucket 1 back to $100,000. And here's the key. You still have more invested for growth than you started with. Spending happened. Growth happened faster. Extend this out 15 to 20 years. By year 10, you've spent $200,000 total, but because of compounding, your portfolio might be larger than the original $500,000. By year 15, you've withdrawn $300,000 and you may be sitting on $750,000 or more. By year 20, you've spent nearly your original balance and your account could be pushing $1 million. That's not fantasy math. That's compounding with separation. The psychology behind this is everything. Most retirees stare at total balance declines and panic. Every withdrawal feels like loss. That fear leads to over-conservatism. Over-conservatism kills long-term performance. But when you have dedicated buckets, you expect bucket 1 to decline. It's fuel. It's meant to burn. You focus on whether the growth bucket is compounding faster than you're spending. That shift changes behavior. Instead of hoarding, you operate. Instead of fearing downturns, you prepare for them. Now let's talk about crashes. Imagine the market drops 25% 2 years into retirement. Under a traditional model, you're withdrawing from a shrinking portfolio. That locks in losses. That's sequence of returns risk, and it's devastating. Under a bucket system, you're still spending from cash. Your growth investments get time to recover. Historically, the U.S. market recovers from major crashes within years, not decades. If you're not forced to sell low, volatility becomes noise. Same market crash. Different experience. Different lifetime outcome. Now, let's discuss inflation. If you move too conservative too early, your portfolio doesn't outpace inflation. Healthcare costs rise. Property taxes rise. Everything creeps upward. If your portfolio averages only 3 to 4% long-term and inflation runs at 3%, you're barely breaking even before withdrawals. Growth isn't optional in a 30-year retirement. It's necessary. That's why wealthy retirees typically hold more equity exposure than conventional advice suggests. It feels uncomfortable, but comfort and safety are not the same. Now, here's a controversial piece. Housing. By 65, many Americans have a paid-off home. Conventional wisdom says stay put. No mortgage equals security. But ownership still costs. Property tax, insurance, maintenance, utilities. In many states, that's easily $15,000 to $20,000 per year. Plus, you may be sitting on $400,000 in equity that produces nothing. Compare that to downsizing or relocating to a lower-cost state, freeing up $250,000 to $300,000 to invest at 7 to 8%. That could generate $17,000 to $24,000 annually in growth on average. Your house feels secure, but is it efficient? This isn't emotional advice, it's math. Another major retirement mistake happens in the first 3 years. After decades of restraint, retirees splurge. RV purchase, luxury remodel, helping adult children with large down payments, multiple major vacations. Pulling out $150,000 early destroys compounding mass. Compounding is weight sensitive. The bigger the base, the more powerful the growth. A heavy withdrawal early creates permanent drag. Let me quantify opportunity cost. Spending an extra $50,000 in year 1 of retirement isn't just $50,000. At 8% growth over 25 years, that's roughly $340,000 in future value. That boat might actually cost you $250,000. That doesn't mean don't enjoy retirement. It means understand trade-offs clearly. Wealthy retirees think in systems. They rebalance annually. They adjust withdrawals based on market performance. They lean in when markets are down. They trim when markets are overheated. They don't disengage from money when they leave work. They shift into active stewardship. Now here's another overlooked element. Purpose. Retirees with structured portfolios often continue light consulting, part-time work, or passion income. Not because they need to survive, because optional income dramatically reduces withdrawal pressure. Even $10,000 annually for the first decade of retirement can preserve hundreds of thousands of dollars in portfolio value long-term. Small streams matter. The biggest shift you have to make is identity. You're not done. You're not winding down. You're managing a 30-year financial machine. If you treat your portfolio like a piggy bank, you break it open. If you treat it like a production system, it produces. And that's the core lesson. Retirement isn't about stopping growth. It's about designing sustainable growth. The difference between someone who barely makes it and someone who thrives isn't always starting wealth.
It's structure. It's sequencing. It's discipline in the first 5 years. It's maintaining growth allocation. It's avoiding panic selling. It's minimizing wasteful early withdrawals. You can implement this whether you're 20 years out or 2 years out. Separate your spending from your growth. Avoid excessive early splurges. Keep meaningful equity exposure. Be intentional about housing. Adjust with the market, not against it. And if you do this correctly, something interesting happens. Instead of watching your net worth shrink year after year, you may watch it stabilize, then grow. Instead of fearing longevity, you welcome it. Instead of hoping you don't run out, you realize you might leave more than you started with. That's a completely different emotional retirement. And that difference doesn't start at 90. It starts with how you structure your money today. My name's Evan.